I would like to call upon our guest of honor and session chair, Mr. Sohail Javad, Executive Director, Digital Financial Services Group for the State Bank of Pakistan, who will be talking to us on the new challenges and the new opportunities in building Pakistan's digital payments ecosystem. Mr. Javad.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. So I'll briefly speak about the policy roadmap that we are thinking of taking in the area of digital payments. And I'll also go through some of the measures that we've taken in the past 10 years or so. And I'll try to connect the dots for you, and I'll try to give you give you an idea of what State Bank is thinking about the growth of digital payment services in Pakistan. This slide shows the policy toolkit that we use for strategizing the development of digital payment systems in Pakistan. If you see on the left, you will see that we are building our entire digital payment space on two aspects. One is the digital ID. Pakistan is very lucky to have a digital ID program of itself, and that helps us in onboarding, that helps us in providing services. And we also have, I think our mobility is also good, our telecom penetration, our telecom density. And on these two strengths, we try to build our future. The second aspect, which is very important for us, is the availability of payment rails. And if you see what we have done during the past few years, you will see that we have been specially focusing on payment rails, starting with the implementation of RTGS, the real-time gross settlement system in 2007, in fact in 2008. And then moving on to the RAST instant payment rails right now, and a lot of initiatives in the middle. So you will see that we have been trying to ensure that participants, customers, businesses have access to good payment rails, because we believe that having good payment rails is as important as having a digital ID system, because payment rails enable faster transmission of money and fast payment processing capability for the businesses. The third and a very important area is continuously reviewing the laws, regulations, and the standards. I think a good regulator should be implementing standards, and that's what we do. So we have been implementing standards in the area of security, in the area of payments, in the area of other financial services. We are an EMV compliant jurisdiction for card payments. We have been using 3DS. We have been using, we encourage the use of other standards. In fact, our most latest system, which is the RAST instant payment system, is built on ISO 20022, which is again a state-of-the-art standard. Digital innovations is a new area, signifying that State Bank is continuously thinking about how to use the new technology for improving not just the service provision capability of the businesses, but also supporting customers. So we are looking at blockchain, we're looking at how we can use AI, how we can use subtech and regtech, both for supervisory capability and for compliance related aspects. And there is a division in our group which works on new technologies, and we think about how we can move forward with these and address issues, especially those relating to consumer protection, especially those relating to compliance and all that. And I'll talk about that as well. And of course, the most important part, one of the most important parts, is our oversight capability, which is very important for us, because we need to keep an eye on what's going on. And to keep an eye is not with the purpose of just trying to know what's going on, but just to make sure that what is happening is in line with the policy objectives and in line with the customer protection standards. And on the right, these are the factors that we keep in our mind whenever we design a new regulation. So we always keep on thinking about market structures. What do I mean by market structure? So if somebody gives me an example of a product in China, I would say, yes, I agree with this, but the market structure of Pakistan is very different than China. We are sort of a democratic financial system. There is no monopoly here. People can come and offer their services as per the rules and regulations. We cannot allocate, we do not allocate. And we try not to intervene in pricing, although there would be some, I know size on pricing also. But there are certain areas where we say we'll go and we'll not go. So market structures is one very important aspect for us. What level of SBP's intervention should be there and in what areas? That is the other thing that we continuously talk about. Pricing is very important. Pricing, I think pricing is a make or break for the industry. But to what extent we want to regulate pricing? To what extent we want to, what should be the policy principles for pricing? So for example, transparency is a good principle for pricing. But do we want to intervene or not? That depends on the sector. So you've seen that we have intervened in the IBFT, interbank fund transfers. RAST is free. But are we going to do the same for, say, merchant payments? That's a question mark. That will develop, it depends on how the market develops in the merchant area. And of course, interoperability. And yesterday, I and Mudassar Saab, we were in a session on interoperability. And I think some good points were made there. So interoperability is again very important. It's a two-edged sword. It may, for example, timing of interoperability is very important. You do it too soon, you kill innovation. You do it too late, you have monopolies on your hand. What level of interoperability do you want? Technical interoperability, business interoperability, or governing interoperability? So these are the questions that we always keep in our mind whenever we decide on any policy issues. This is just a journey of what we have done during the past 10 years. And today I want to do a very quick comparison of what we were 10 years ago and where we are 10 years now. But if you look at the measures that we have taken, you'll appreciate that the toolkit that I showed you is reflecting here. So we are either implementing standards, or we are encouraging new payment providers or new service providers, or we are coming up with new regulations, or we are implementing infrastructure where required. Where we see that market is not doing its due, then of course we will go and like we did for the faster payment systems. So imagine what it was like 10 years ago. So I'm talking about, let's say, 2012. What we had in 2012. And this is just a snapshot of what we had. Branchless banks were very new, I think, 2-3 years. RTGS, yes, we had an RTGS, and it was processing mostly interbank payments, both wholesale and we were thinking of opening it up for retail. The number of cards, ATM machines, you can see the number very low. And similarly, I think IBFT was emerging, very new. No EMIs, no PSPs, no PSOs, digital banks, I don't think it was even a concept at that time. And we have, I think, traveled a lot in the last 10 years. And so we can see that we not only have relatively better numbers, and I'm not saying that these are very good numbers. Of course, these are not, keeping in view the size and the size of the country that we are. But I think we've made significant progress in terms of encouraging new service providers, in terms of encouraging new instruments, in terms of expanding our digital footprint, but a lot needs to be done. So let me briefly talk about the payments infrastructure that we are envisioning. And this snapshot that you see on the screen is something that we are planning to achieve. So of course, RTGS remains at the core as the wholesale payment processing system, as a system that almost processes on the average 1.8 1.7 or 1.8 trillion rupees a day. So it's there, yes. RTGS is for systemic stability. It's for financial stability. That's the objective. Connected to RTGS and an extension is RAST, which is the instant payment system with the objective of financial inclusion. So State Bank has two main goals. One is financial stability and the other is financial inclusion. So RAST is for financial inclusion. RAST is connected with RTGS in real time, which means participants have access to their liquidity with State Bank in real time. They are able to bring that liquidity into RAST and use it for their retail payments. It's got its own API gateway. It's got its own CAS, which is a directory whereby you can use your mobile numbers to send payments to each other. And by the mid of this year, we'll be having a request to pay module, which will give the capability to RAST of requesting where a person can request payment from the payer, either using their apps, either using their QR codes, or any other form of payment. So that's something that we have. We expect all our regulated entities to be connected to RAST for full interoperability. So universal interoperability is, I think, and State Bank think, that now is the time to go for universal interoperability in Pakistan. 10 years ago, that may not have been the case. But today, this is something that we are aspiring for and that we intend to do with RAST. We also have our private sector playing its full role. OneLink is a major player. VRG is another player. NIFT Gateway. We also have Avanza Gateway. So these are private sector gateways, and we are working with them to bring them onto RAST as well. We are working with government entities to process their payments using RAST. For example, AGPR has started processing its salary payments on RAST for the federal government salaries, and very soon they'll be bringing in their other payments as well. We are also working with provincial revenue departments. We are also working with provincial IT boards, like Punjab IT board, to connect to RAST. On the left, we've got issuers, acquirers, which are banks, payment entities, EMIs, and we also foresee that with the introduction of the request to pay, we'll be seeing the emergence of payment aggregators, whether they are bill aggregators or merchant aggregators. And we expect these aggregators to collaborate and work with the regulated entities as well, especially in the area of payments. We are also initiating a new project, and we'll be upgrading our RTGS system to a new state-of-the-art auto transfer system, ATS Plus. And that system would be based on ISO 20022, and we are also aiming to replace our securities processing module, the full back office functionality in that new system. We are initiating that project with the help of World Bank, and inshallah by 2025, mid of 2025, we'll be finishing that project as well. So I already spoke about RAST. So what is RAST going to do? Just to give you, I think RAST has been quite successful. We started P2P RAST payments in February last year. And as of today, we have processed about more than 1.1 trillion rupees on RAST just for P2P. We have got about more than 27 million IDs on RAST. And to give you perspective, our app users are almost as many as the RAST IDs, maybe a little bit more or less. We also have, on the average, daily RAST processes about more than 10 billion. I think it's now started crossing 11 billion rupees. And the number of transactions remains at around 400,000 per day. So keeping in view that still work in progress, keeping in view that there is, it's still being deployed, I think this is a big achievement for us. But what we were, the scale that we were planning, looking at other countries, I think we have surpassed that scale in half the time that we were planning to do. And with next year, with the request to pay, we are encouraging not just banks, not just regulated entities, but third parties, especially merchant providers, to come and get connected to RAST. I think that payment services should be ubiquitous, And entities desiring of onboarding a payment system or a platform should be able to do that without any glitches. Unfortunately, right now we've got a lot of friction in this area. We get complaints from banks, from entities that banks are not helping them, or they are just making the process of onboarding as difficult as they can. So these are the issues that are there, and we are fully aware of that. But like I said, we have to keep the market structures in mind as well. We have to make sure that we don't take any such step that disrupts competition from the industry. So yes, we are looking at it, we are overseeing it, but we'll keep an eye on how the market develops. But I think the emergence of payment aggregators, the emergence of super aggregators, the adoption of the QR code standard that we issued last year on Rust, is going to be very important for the development of the industry. So what are we planning to do as we go forward? And I'll just try to quickly wrap up my talk here. I think the first and very important thing for us going forward is data. We need to use data for a variety of purposes. Data for KYC, data for fraud prediction, and most importantly, access to good data for good policy making. Like I said, Rust is about financial inclusion, so we need to have access to good data. So we are working on open banking framework, for example. How can we facilitate the partnership between banks and between third parties to connect and share data among themselves? For that, we worked with IFC and we set up a technical sandbox I think in December last year or November last year. The sandbox ran for about 2 months. I'm glad to report that the sandbox completed its operations on 31st January this year. And out of we had 6 banks in that sandbox and 8 third-party fintechs. And out of those 8, I think 6 were able to develop products based on their learnings from that sandbox. So the next step would be going forward, how we bring that sandbox into live production, how we can open it up. And the idea is to identify use cases that would foster with the use of this data. And second, to have an API repository with this API standard so that people know what to call, what to ask for, the security standards for that particular API. So that's what we are aiming for. The second thing just on which we are working, I'll not say a project, is the central bank digital currencies. And CBDC is, I think, like they say, it's a solution in search of a problem. I tend to agree with that. Yes, CBDC is a solution in search of a problem. It is a use case of distributed ledger technologies. But then we have looked at a number of design choices. We have spoken to almost all the jurisdictions who are working on CBDC, and we're trying to learn from their lessons from their experiences. The first is, what type of model are we going to adopt on CBDC if we decide to do it? And I have an extremist thought on that, which is CBDC can be tokenized, whereby a state bank can directly issue central bank currency to ordinary customers. Or it can be intermediated. So we issue the currency to the banks and the banks issue it to the customers. Now, if we want to issue it to the bank and the banks to issue to the customers, why have CBDC in the first place? Rust is a faster payment system. It's perfect. The only advantage is offline payments, P2P payments. That would be keeping in view the tele-density in our country, which in certain areas is not so good. That may help us do offline payments. But other than that, my thought is that if banks continue to do what they are doing right now, which is not to look at what their customers want, which is not to listen to the voice of their customers, which is treating customers with contempt. And I apologize if anybody doesn't like my words, but this is what we in State Bank feel. Right now, banks treat their customers with contempt unless it's a priority customer. Priority customer or elite customer, yes, welcome. But for an ordinary person, when they walk into a bank branch, They don't get the service that is expected. They get robbed, scammed, they lose their funds, they call the bank, and the bank says, you gave your own password. The liability is yours. Go home. Any other issue, you make a call to a call center and you have to wait for 1 hour and 2 hours to get the customer service representative to talk to you. And if they talk to you, rarely does a customer get what they want. And as a result, people don't want to bank. And I think that attitude is one of the leading causes of financial exclusion in Pakistan. So I always say this to banks. If you don't listen to the voice of the customer, if you don't improve your support to the customer, if you don't think about customer protection all the time, and if you don't respect your customer, then we are going to do CBDC. And I would like to do CBDC in a tokenized manner. I will not want banks to be part of that CBDC. And you will come and say, what will happen to intermediation? What will happen to credit intermediation? I'll say leave credit intermediation. You don't have any right, banks don't have any right for customer deposits if you can't give products to customers, if you can't give them access to finance, if you can't give them access to their money cheaply. So why have banks in the first place? So CBDC is a technology that is disruptive, which means that it will disrupt the entire system. And disruption is hugely different than innovation. I am sure all of you know about that. So that's our thinking on CBDC. We have looked at a number of service providers. We have talked to service providers internationally and in Pakistan as well. And we are pretty much clear on the design choices. Whenever we decide to do CBDC, we will think about those choices. But like I said, I'm an extremist person when it comes to customer. And I think regulators should be activists. Regulators should be extremists in this regard. So, yes. And finally, cross-border payments is very important. Cross-border, again, CBDC is a use case. Cross-border is a use case for CBDCs that we are working on. Social disbursements is a use case for CBDCs that we are working on. And finally, I think the most important thing for us right now is frauds. Frauds is a menace in Pakistan. It's growing. And unfortunately, fraudsters are way ahead. I'm not saying banks are not doing anything in this regard, but they are coming up with new techniques all the time. And that's what I will request to all of you, especially the new digital banks, that please think about how you can handle frauds. What State Bank will not like to have is you telling the customer that since you gave your password, it's your liability. No, sir, this is not going to work. We need to find innovative solutions for that as well. So thank you. I'm sorry I took a lot more time than I was allocated to, but